roll call?
Yes, I'll do that.
I'll welcome you all today, and I'll hand you directly over. Can I just say before Steph does the roll call, we have Dell observing, but we also have Cara Hutchin, Malcolm Hutchin, who Isla has been mentoring for the last while. She will be going off to university to do politics, and she asked if she could just observe our meeting today, and I have said that's okay. So if you see an extra person, you'll know that it's Cara. Okay, Isla, Steph, if you want to carry on.
Thank you, convener. So I'll just take a roll call so that it's just clear for the recording and for the minute who's on the call. If I could please ask members and trade union advisors to just confirm that you're present when I call your name. Convener?
Present.
Vice convener?
Present.
Councillor Cameron?
Present.
Councillor Copeland?
Present.
Councillor Delaney?
Present.
Councillor Graham?
Present.
Councillor Hutchison?
Present.
Councillor MacDonald?
Present.
Councillor Reynolds?
Present.
And Mr. Willis?
Yeah, present.
Mr. Masson?
Present.
Mr. Tarr?
Present.
Mr. Ferguson?
Present.
Ms. Thorpe?
Present.
Mr. Constable?
Present.
Ms. Gray?
Present.
Mr. Craig?
Present.
Okay, thank you. And just a quick reminder to all remote participants, if you could please keep your camera and microphone switched off during the meeting, unless you're speaking, in which case please switch both on. If remote participants wish to speak, please use the raise hand function or type it into the chat and we'll alert the convener. If you're having difficulty doing either of those for technical reasons, please just turn on your camera and signal in that way. Okay, thank you, convener.
Fine, thank you very much, Steph. If we can now address the agenda for today. Item 1.1, there is nothing on that issue. Item 2.1, likewise, there is nothing there. Is there any declarations of interest at 3.1?
I'm not seeing any hands, convener.
Any hands? Okay. If along the line there's something comes up, you can always declare. Item 4.1, we have nothing, no deputations. Item 5.1, the minutes of the last meeting. Are people content that that's accurate minutes?
Agreed.
Agreed. That's fine, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to the committee planner at item 6.1. Isla, you want to come in here and explain?
Which item? Sorry.
9. I think it's item 9, is it?
Apologies, convener. Let me just find. Are we on the business planner, item 9?
Yes, we are. We're on the business planner at item 6.1, and I think it's item 9.
Yeah, I see. Thank you. Apologies. Absolutely. So we have sought to delay the recruit scheme update simply because the timing of the next committee being in June means that we will have gone through the first cycle of learning, but we won't have had a chance to really look at the data and the feedback that we will have had from that. So unfortunately, we would be in a good position around July, August, but obviously with it being summer break, the next committee that's relevant is September. So we will be coming back in September with the full report. In the meantime, if there's any questions from any committee member, they can contact me directly.
Yeah, okay, can we agree that for that one? Is there any other questions on the planner? Any hands? No?
No.
Okay, can we agree at item 6.1? Okay, if we might move on to 7.1, there is none at that item. Okay, we now move on to item 8.1.
Sorry.
Sorry, did somebody put their hand up? Oh yeah, I see it.
Sorry, it's Steph. I had my hand up for the business planner.
Sorry, Councillor Cameron, I can see it now.
No,
I didn't see it
that's
before.
okay.
Okay, we're back, Pedal, on you go.
Thank you very much. It was a question on 15, which is the annual committee effectiveness report. It's been put back, delayed until September. if my memory serves me correctly, we couldn't have missed many meetings, saying we only went into lockdown at the end of March, so we maybe missed one meeting. Does it mean if we have this in September, this one will definitely be more than a year? And will we then, as a result of that, be adjusting the timing of the effectiveness reports in future to September rather than April?
Convener, I can maybe answer part of that if that's okay.
Yeah, fine. And this is one that's not due until June anyway. Is this item 14?
Yes, that's correct, Convener.
Yes, Councillor Cameron is correct that I think we only had one meeting of SGC cancelled. However, just so that we've got a consistent approach, we've done the same at all the committees across the board in terms of when the annual effectiveness report will be presented. Some of the other committees have more than one meeting, which hasn't happened, and so the data is just to ensure that we have sufficient data to present to members. In terms of if that's going to be reviewed for next year, I think we'll be looking at that within the team to work out what's the best timing to present that, so that there's not too much of a delay before the next one, but so that we still have sufficient information to put in front of members.
Okay,
that's fine. Thank you very much, Convener. Thank you, Steph.
Okay, you're welcome. In that case, we did 7.1. We now move on to 8.1, which is a referral from City Growth. I have a motion to this report, which I'll ask Steph to circulate.
We'll just get that circulated now, Convener. Thank you. I think that should just be coming around shortly, Convener. Thanks. We'll see if we can get it displayed on the screen as well.
Sorry, I'm just interrupting. It's Lindsay here. Did everybody receive the email? I've sent it and I've tried to display it in the chat as well.
I've certainly received it. It's Councillor Cameron.
Okay.
Convener,
right,
could we get a 5-minute break just to have a look at this, please?
Yeah, try and display it as well.
Yeah, I hear you, Councillor Cameron. Has everybody now got it in their view?
Yes.
But that's okay.
Yes.
Yes, okay, in that case, yes, I'll give you 5 minutes to have a look at it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Convener, are you content if we just keep the recording going and then just if everybody puts their camera off for the 5 minutes, is that okay? Yep, okay.
I don't have the motion in front of me from you, but I do have it anyway. So.
Okay.
What time is it? 11. 5:16. Come back. Oh, there it is.
I think Lindsay's got it on the screen now, Councillor Allen.
I've got it. Got it. Oh, thanks, Lindsay. No, I said no. Go to your bed. Go on. I'll put you through the house. The tractor man.
Harvey, no, enough. How can you?
Okay, Councillor Cameron, how are you getting on?
Almost there, convener. If we just another couple of minutes, please.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Harvey, I said enough. Harvey. Stop it.
Hi,
Okay.
convener. Yeah, we're ready now. Thank you.
Okay, can we take down the screen? Can I take it you'll be moving an amendment, Councillor Cameron?
You might want to treat it as an amendment, maybe if I just tell you what it is, and then you
Yes,
can.
please.
Basically, we're going to note the letter, take no further action just now because COSLA are negotiating with the trade unions.
Okay, that's fine. I'll take that as an amendment. Do I have a seconder for the motion?
Yep, convener, happy to second.
Okay, do you have a seconder, Councillor Cameron?
Hopefully.
Somebody,
So I'm trying
Yes,
to drop
I'll
in all
second
seconds.
That's Councillor Copeland.
Councillor Copeland, that's fine. It just we need it. We need the names for the minutes. That's fine. In that case, I'll go ahead and move the motion and let my seconder speak, and you can do likewise with your amendment, and then we'll open for debate. Okay?
Thank you.
Right. And the moving of the motion, I would start off by saying I don't think anybody in the room would deny the fact that NHS staff have worked hard and done a great job, and we would not deny them their bonus. Having said that, I think our own staff are equally entitled to such a bonus. They should be respected and regarded with the same courtesy as the NHS staff have been. As it's worked out, the Scottish Government has decided, for whatever reason, that our staff do not qualify for that standard, do not come up to that standard, and have not agreed that they should supply the money for our staff to have an equal payment for the very important work and valuable work that our staff have. And I think as a committee, we should be supporting council staff, our staff, but council staff in general. And therefore, I would hope that we could agree this motion. And I'll hand over to my seconder to do that. Okay, Ryan.
Oh, yep. Thank you, convener. Yep. So more than happy to second you on this one. I think this comes down to the issue of parity. I think you either believe there's a parity of in respect in terms of workforce, or you don't. I appreciate that a lot of the time, you know, these decisions come down to financial reasons, and if that's simply the case, then I believe the Scottish Minister should have made that clear in the response to the letter. But it doesn't seem that they're not kind of being upfront and just saying that they don't want to put the finances and allow us to make that you know, the £500 award to local government workers as well, because they've decided just to make it for NHS staff. Now, and I believe also the letters that we've kind of had back, there's a little bit of disingenuousness in terms of, you know, suggesting that we could have just made the payments. But as we're seeing, and as we all know, everyone knows, you know, we're the second lowest funded council in Scotland. We continue to get more and more of our funding restricted in terms of what we can do with it. I don't want to relitigate all the arguments we've had in the budget, and I'm trying to keep it very focused on point here. But we do know that our budget's significant, and a growing amount of it is very restricted in requesting compliance with larger Scottish Government policies. So when it comes to what money we have available to spend on our priorities, perhaps in this instance, awarding some you know, some bonuses to our staff or an additional payment to our staff, our hands are very much tied, because the freedom to decide and the freedom to choose our own financial priorities are constrained by the amounts awarded to us. Now, we've seen over the last 4 months, especially in the run-up to an election, there's lots of funding that's been able to go around and lots of commitments that have been made as the Scottish Government's enjoyed a significant increase in funding as a result of COVID, sort of barring it consequential. So I believe the money was very much there, and they had a decision to make whether to do it or not. But if having decided not to do it, they should be honest and say it's because they don't view it as there's the same level of parity of workers, and that they don't believe it's a similar priority. And they should have given us the ability to make that decision by giving us the financial freedom to do so. So I'll be supporting you, convener. And I've tried to avoid kind of going into the big debates around budget and the usual kind of avenue of discussion that is, because I think I'd hope everyone at the table today all believes in that we all agree in the core principle that there should be a parity of respect and support for our workers, and I think that's what we are seeking to do here today, convener. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Cameron, do you want to move your amendment now, please?
Yes, thank you, convener. Basically, if we look at the history of this, in December, we unanimously agreed the causal motion. We did not unanimously agree to write to the Minister for Local Government in order to put our case. But the administration, on a vote, pushed this through so that the Chief Executive ended up having to write to the Minister for Local Government. And you will note from the letters we've got, we didn't get a reply from the Minister for Local Government. We got a reply from the Minister for the Secretary for Finance, which is where we should have written in the first place if we were going to write a letter in any instances. If we're going to speak about being disingenuous, I think Councillor Houghton has once again been disingenuous. We may well be the lowest funded council in Scotland. There is a reason for that, and that reason is a causal formula. And the causal formula is supported by all local authorities. We are victims of our own success, probably. But we find ourselves in tight places financially for many reasons, one of which, and one of the biggest ones of which, is the fact that we now have so much debt for all the capital projects that have been delivered during this period of time since 2012, that a chunk, quite a large chunk, of our revenue funding is used for that. And I'm going to stop there in relation to that and concentrate on the matter at hand. Nobody, I think, in this room would suggest that parity should be there. But I think there's a difference between what is happening with the NHS, which is, very clear cut, and the funding has been made available through Barnett Consequential specifically for the NHS, and where we go. And as I read the letter from the Finance Secretary, and perhaps interpretation is important here, as a council, maybe we could have made the decision to pay that. We made a decision at budget that could end up with us paying 7.5 million out of our revenue budget every year for £150 million development of the city centre master plan down towards the beach, which I, as an elected member of this council, only found out about by reading the local press. My constituents want to know why I hadn't said anything about this, why I didn't know about it, why I didn't have any input into this, good or bad. But this administration seems to work everything through the local press. So this isn't us saying, most certainly is us not saying that our staff do not deserve recompense for what they've done. But right now, we have COSLA negotiating on behalf of local authorities with the trade unions in relation to their pay and conditions. And for us to agree to your motion, convener, the bit of the motion that we could have agreed to is one. The rest of it becomes very, very difficult because it just becomes political. So as far as I'm concerned, in our amendment, we note the Cabinet Secretary's response and we await the outcome of the agreement, outcome of the discussions with COSLA and the trade unions in terms of recompense and remuneration of staff. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. Can we have your seconder now, please?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Technical difficulties. Sorry for the delay.
Okay.
I'm obviously seconding Councillor Cameron, and I think it's worth noting This was referred to Staff Governance Committee for trade union input on the letter, and you've produced a motion before the trade unions even got a chance to speak, which I find a bit disconcerting because that was the reason it was referred. So disappointed there. I think Councillor Cameron's hit the nail on the head. There are still negotiations ongoing between the trade unions and COSLA, and the outcome is still awaited. We would be extremely premature to do what you're asking until the outcome of those negotiations is known. That's the first point. The second point is the letter from the Cabinet Secretary for Finance is dated the 27th of January. The committee referred it to us in February. There was nothing in the budget provisions to cover this. Now, Councillor Cameron has pointed out that 7.2 million or 7.5 million pounds is going to be spent every year servicing a debt that we're prepared to incur. This payment would cost, I think, roughly about £4 million to make this payment. That would be a one-off payment, not an annual payment, a one-off payment. Now, I think it's a case of priorities here. I wholly praise our staff. I wholly support our staff, and I would dearly love for them to get this. Problem is, we don't have the money because it's been spent elsewhere. So I think Councillor Cameron has hit it beautifully on the head when he says, let's wait till we see the outcome of the negotiation with COSLA, then we can take it forward from there. So I'm totally supporting Councillor Cameron. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Copeland. Can I now open the issue for comment and debate from anyone that wants to come in, and staff and I will keep an eye for hands so that everybody that wants to come in will get their fair chance.
Convener, Councillor Delaney and then Mr. Tarr as well.
Okay, Councillor Delaney.
Thank you very much, Convener. I would certainly echo the comments that we've been hearing from both sides, that health and social care were given this bonus, and it was very, very much deserved. But also, had it not been for the dedication of our council staff, the city would literally have ground to a halt. Some services operated through the pandemic, but for those services that were stood down, there were so many, as we're seeing in other reports as well, who took on roles within other services that were operating to increase their capacity due to sort of loss of available staff due to COVID, to shielding, to self-isolation, and such like, Convener. And I think this is too easily forgotten by some as we move forward into the recovery phase now. And staff at all levels have contributed towards keeping things running throughout this pandemic. And in fact, they're still contributing towards the recovery phase. I think it's only right that these people receive recognition for their efforts. And I think that they should also receive the £500 as a token gesture under such unprecedented circumstances. Now, in fact, just today, Convener, we're seeing now all teachers are back to classrooms. They're putting themselves at risk in order to ensure that our children's education doesn't suffer. And with the rollout of the vaccine to the top 9 priority groups nearing completion, again, there's no movement on calls which have been made by this council to prioritise teaching staff in the next round of vaccination. And the Scottish Government have said all the right things when it comes to recognising key workers. But I do feel, in fact, that these words are quite hollow and meaningless without the financial recognition that others have quite rightly received. The local authorities have borne a heavy financial cost dealing with the pandemic, and this city, for one, has not been fully compensated for this by the Scottish Government. And to expect local authorities to pick up the cost of such one-off payments when those to health and social care were met nationally quite clearly demonstrates how little the SNP government values those who work for local government. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Delaney. Did you say Mr. Tarr was next?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you come.
Thank you, Convener. Just to separate out a couple of arguments here, the £500 payment and the pay claim that the unions have got in place at the moment are really separate. Unison as a union, along with the sister unions, I would agree, we support the NHS payment of the offer to them. But we also have members who supported those NHS workers in the hubs and supported key workers in getting to their work so that the virus could be fought. And I think we need a bit of reality here that there needs to be that recognition for those staff who put themselves on the line. Okay, they weren't in the hospitals, but they were actually making sure that nurses, doctors, all sorts of people could get to their work to actually deliver that. It's true that there's still the negotiation going on between COSLA and the unions about a pay claim, but it's a separate thing from this £500 payment. This is, as the previous speaker there said, this is a one-off recognition, a gesture to the staff who put themselves in a really difficult position and who kept the kind of going. It's not just staff in the hubs, but it was cleaners, it was waste operatives. I mean, if we hadn't had the waste operatives, heaven only knows what kind of diseases we'd have been facing in addition to COVID. So I think it's really a recognition for that this motion is calling for, and I believe it is separate from the pay claim and should be seen as separate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tarr. Do we have anybody else, Steph? Yeah.
Yes, Miss Gray and then Mr. Willis.
Okay, Miss Gray, and you come.
Hi, Councillor. It's just, yeah, I echo what the Les has said, the Unison has said as well. But, it's disappointing that we're actually having to have this conversation and try and push on this, especially when a lot of the local authority workers, they were classed as essential workers, critical workers at one point, and then essential workers. So yeah, I share that, and I also share what Eunice is saying. It is a separate thing altogether. So yeah, I actually support this. Unite support that motion.
Thank you very much. Can we have Mr. Willis now?
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I'd just like to echo the comments from sister trade unions there, and on behalf of our members who have worked very, very hard during this pandemic. We saw the NHS workers and social care workers getting their payment, and rightly so, but they have done equally as hard a job in terrible circumstances, and they don't understand why they haven't had the payment. So we fully welcome this motion and fully support it.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Do we have anybody else?
We've got Councillor Graham, Convener, Councillor MacDonald, and then Mr. Constable, I think.
Okay, Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Convener. I stand in support of yourself and the request that the Scottish Government to fully fund a one-off £500 payment to all local government workers, and calls on them to reconsider this request. As has been highlighted, this is different to the negotiations, the wage negotiations that's going on within COSLA at the moment. Like everyone else, I think everyone recognises it's right that the First Minister herself has recognised our National Health Service and social care workers. But I believe it's wrong to ignore the contributions made by other key workers on the front line of public services. This is a national fight against COVID and should be recognised as such. Teachers, refuge collectors, school cleaners, pupil support workers, these are just some of the people in local government who have worked for us all throughout this pandemic. They should not be forgotten about. These workers have gone above and beyond in delivering local services during which can only be described as a year of unprecedented challenges and pressures. They've looked after our elderly, they've looked after our kids, and they deserve recognition. I'll probably be a wee bit political here, which I wasn't going to be, but the SNP say that they're stronger for Scotland. Well, they're not stronger for many in the public sector who have been heroic throughout this pandemic. Schools and early year staff, those working, and even those not in the council services. What about the police services, the universities and colleges, to name but a few? They have all been working through extraordinary circumstances, keep us safe. I firmly believe that the NHS workers deserve the funding, social care workers deserve the funding, and all key workers deserve the funding. Let's have justice for all. Thanks, convener.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor MacDonald, you want to come in?
Thank you very much, convener. Most of what I was going to say has already been said by other people, and I really did feel for those who are not supporting the motion, who are obviously feeling very uncomfortable in the position that they had to take. But it is absolutely the case that the politics of this do mean that you have to pick a side, and I am really pleased to be able to support yourself, convener, in valuing local government and in valuing local government workers, because that's what this is all about at the end of the day. So I am very much in favour of going back to the Scottish Government and asking again. The letter that we got really didn't, as Councillor Houghton said, did not answer the real queries that we put out there. So that's what we should be doing, and making the case once again that our local workers are given this £500 bonus. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Constable, Ron Constable, are you there?
Yes, thank you, convener. I don't have much more to add, but would like to mirror the comments made by my sister trade unions. I think it's important to realise in keeping schools open, although the EIS represents teachers and associated professionals, but in keeping schools open, it depends on cleaners, janitors, bin men, all sorts of associated areas. And I think any sort of recognition to show that that was the importance of keeping schools open. The First Minister often stated that the first priority was to keep schools open, and they would be the first back or the last to close, I think, to be more accurate. And I think any sort of recognition in terms of a payment towards those professionals and school staff who work tirelessly, often accumulating many hours. I was speaking to some members of management, some head teachers who were turning in 60-hour days, 60-hour weeks, just to make sure that they got their schools open, they got their risk assessments in place, that the mitigations in terms of ventilation, masks, hand washing, it's a colossal undertaking by those professionals and the other services that kept schools open. Thank you, convener.
Thank you very much, Mr. Constable. Do we have anybody else? Yeah.
Councillor Hutchison, convener.
Okay, Councillor Hutchison, you want to come in now?
Yep, thank you, convener. I just want to firstly recognise once again the fantastic efforts of all our local government staff in responding to the pandemic, and as we move into the recovery, the effort they'll be making throughout that as well. And I hope that the exceptional and brilliant work is recognised in the pay negotiations that COSLA are having just now. But convener, I think in your speech, I think you touched on the two key words there. We talked about our staff, and to me that's the important line in this. They are our staff. The Scottish Government and Kate Fox in her response, she said councils are independent bodies accountable to the electorate. It's not to ministers, not to cabinet secretaries. They're accountable to the electorate, the people out there that vote for us. And it's for us to make decisions about our staff. The Scottish Government have funded an award for their staff, and it's for us as if we're going to go down that route, it would be for us as a council to decide that. Now, the Vice Convener in his speech, he said there's lots of funding to go around, and my simple response to that would be, well, we've had a budget that announced £150 million of funding. What's the interest on that each individual year? That's lots of money to go around. We got this response in January. We could easily have referred that letter to the budget process if it was the view of this administration to award the workers here. And instead, they referred it to this committee after the budget process. Well, that's not an option. I just want to touch quickly on the motion. It talks about council tax freeze directly impacts on local government. That fund, house tax freeze, it's fully funded and it's being included in base funding for future years. That will be carried on. That's funding for not just this year, but for every year going forward. So I'm not in agreement with that. I want to thank our staff. If we're going to have an argument about who should award our staff, that decision, that argument should be had in this council. It should be funded, and if we're looking at that, it should be funded by this council. They are our staff, our workers, our responsibility, and it should be us that pays that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I can't see any more hands, convener.
Maybe people could put down their hands. I see there's quite a lot still up. Is there anybody else wish to come in? Because I will call Councillor Cameron to sum up. No?
Nothing else,
Okay.
convener.
You want to sum up then, Councillor Cameron?
Thank you very much, convener. Councillor Hutchinson just about summed up for me, I think. I think it's very important that it's recognised that we are most certainly not against our staff being paid a recompense for the enormous amount of work they've done, and they've all done it in different ways. Councillor Graham, when he was speaking, then drifted into the police service and fire service, and I think it's difficult to know how we're going to handle this. What we disagree with, convener, is your motion, not the spirit of your motion, not the spirit of paying our staff extra, and therefore for that reason we couldn't support your motion. And I think Councillor Hutchison's comments in relation to our staff, they are not Scottish Government staff, they're Aberdeen City Council staff, and therefore we have that responsibility. And I would just ask people to reflect on that and support the amendment. Thank you, convener.
Okay, thank you. I'll do my summing up now. I have to say, some of your talking there, Councillor Cameron, I fail to understand the relevance of bringing in things that are really not connected. And can I say to Councillor Copeland that it was sent to us, not just for the trade unions, but for the staff committee members, the opportunity to debate and respond. My motion is a response, and we have had a debate, which I'm sure you've heard. This is, and I did, when moving my motion, quite clearly say this is our staff and this is all council staff, that this is a nationwide thing. Therefore, the nation's government should, I think, and feel strongly, should take responsibility for this. Salaries are one thing, however, that is an ongoing issue, and we would support the unions in their battle there. But this is a one-off appreciation payment, and that is what we are moving and supporting today. I would just like to say where in all of this is the SNP's equality commitment. They go on about equality, and that's fine when they do, but they're not interested in the respect and the equality of the people who have been taking this nation through this once in a lifetime, I hope, once and forever, I hope, epidemic that we are going through just now. And our council staff have been at the forefront of this, and I'm sure so has others. And I would urge you all to support this motion today. Thank you. Can we go to the vote?
Thank you, convener. The committee has before it a motion in the name of convener, which has been circulated, and an amendment in the name of Councillor Cameron, which is to note the letter and the response and take no further action at present due to ongoing COSLA negotiations with trade unions on terms and conditions. Would members please vote motion or amendment? Convener?
Motion.
Vice convener?
Motion.
Councillor Cameron?
Amendment.
Councillor Copeland?
Amendment.
Councillor Delaney?
Motion.
Councillor Graham?
Motion.
Councillor Hutchison?
Amendment.
Councillor MacDonald?
Motion.
Councillor Reynolds?
Motion.
That's 6 votes for the motion, convener, 3 for the amendment. The motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and thank the trade union reps there for their well presented input to that debate. Can we then move on now to item 9.1? which is this, I don't never know how to pronounce, but naloxone report. We have questions or comments, or Isla, we also have Officer with us, Derek McGowan, who has also been involved in this work. We also have with us 2 members from the NHS, is that right? Yes, we have, maybe I did write down their names, here we go. We have Fiona Rayburn and we have Simon Raynard from the NHS, who are also prepared to put in answers to questions that anybody might have. Okay, do you want to introduce this in any way, Isla, or will we just go to questions?
Thank you, Convener. Just to say thank you for the input from colleagues in the NHS who you've introduced, and we've had really interesting questions and responses with trade union colleagues as well in the last couple of weeks. It's absolutely the start of what we want to look to do, but with that in mind, happy to respond to any questions.
Okay, and in that case, if the NHS want to come in on any of these questions, we will invite them in. Okay, do we, are you looking out for hands for me, please?
I am, Convener. Councillor Delaney's got his hand up.
Okay, Councillor Delaney, in you come.
Thank you very much, Convener. First of all, I'd like to commend officers for taking forward this great initiative. It's clearly anything that reduces the number of drug deaths in this city is very, very much welcomed. And even if this saves just the life of one person, it will have been worthwhile, as drugs-related deaths have such a long-lasting effect on that person's family and their friends. So every life saved gives that person a second chance to turn their lives around. So I'm very, very supportive, but I do really have one question, and that is that as we go forward and we create a volunteer base of staff who are trained to administer Naxalone, I think it's called, I would like to think that this is something that, for instance, if somebody's maybe not confident going forward, since it is sort of like a medical sort of procedure, I'd like to seek assurances from the director that the participation will be entirely voluntary. There won't be any pressure or expectation for staff in certain services to take the training. I mean, of course, I would like to encourage everyone to, but it's very much a case of it is a medical procedure, and I'd just like to think that our staff are comfortable, confident, and not under any sort of pressure. Thank you very much, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Delaney. Yes, Isla.
Thank you, Convener. Absolutely, Councillor Delaney. What we're looking at doing here is a test of change. There are staff who have already come forward and volunteered over the last year and have been trained to distribute naloxone, certainly, and it's that distribution and administration that we're looking to expand upon. One of the benefits of this that we have in front of us is that we can encourage and support staff from roles who wouldn't perhaps normally be involved in this type of work to support the scheme, and that is a benefit. But absolutely, there would not be pressure on staff who where it would not be appropriate with their role to be involved in this. It may be, I'm sure there are other questions. I can see other hands up. And Fiona is the absolute expert on the training that's involved in this, and so I'm sure if we don't get the chance before we finish with the other questions, perhaps Fiona can give us a bit of information and a comment on the training as well. But up to you, Convener, if you want that now or later.
Yeah, I think it's an important question that Councillor Delaney puts up, and I think if Fiona is prepared to come in and give us just the process of administrating, if you like, and the training up towards that, that would be very helpful, Fiona, if you could do that.
Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for inviting me along. I'm more than happy to give you a bit of an overview in terms of what we do for training. I guess the first thing that I would say for all staff that participate or are even interested in coming along and finding out a bit more about naloxone, the key message that we present to everybody that does naloxone training is if the best that you can do is phone an ambulance and get them on their way, that's great. That's the best that we're asking for. And I think just empowering people with a bit of knowledge about what the correct course of action is stands them in good stead regardless of if they choose naloxone or otherwise. So I guess I don't know the level of detail that you're looking for, but at present we have two products. One that's been long-standing for around 10 years now in the public domain, which is Pranoxad. That's an injectable form of naloxone. But more recently in the last year, we've also got a nasal supply of naloxone. So our training, I guess, is twofold. There's a national e-learning program that we ask all staff to complete in the first instance, and following that we lay on local, almost a Q&A session for staff to talk through local processes, how it would work, and answer those concerns or those questions that remain outstanding, because absolutely it's new to a lot of staff or members of the public that we're currently training there. So I guess there's that twofold aspect of it. What we aim to cover it during it is first a bit around the risks. So we absolutely cover what the risks that may lead to overdose are. Then importantly, how to identify it. And we keep that very simple. So in terms of first aid, it's very basic information that we're covering around about looking for a response. If there's no response, call an ambulance, take action. And then after that, we do a bit more information on the status of the person. So I guess there's two states of being the person could be in, whether they're unconscious and breathing or unconscious and not breathing. And again, we keep it very simple. Those two things are what we're looking for. And then that action that we take afterwards. So then that's just how to use the products. The nasal spray is very straightforward. It literally is open in the pack and squirting a single dose in a single container up the nose. If there's no response after 2 to 3 minutes, using the other container in the other nose. I think for most people who are not familiar with injectable products, that's always a little bit more nerve-wracking, but we do cover both, and we do cover both with all people that are attending the training. And the reason for that is that regardless of which product they choose, and we do allow staff to choose which one they feel more comfortable if they would be administering it, they may come across a situation where they find somebody with perhaps the injectable product, and that allows them to take action if they're aware of how to use both. So very much, as Isla said, I guess we're leaving it open to choice. We're encouraging people, and at whatever stage they feel comfortable in taking action, that's where we would support people to do so.
Thank you very much. That's very informative and comforting. Are you content, Councillor Delaney?
If I can just come in to thank both officers, I'm more than content. These are answers along the lines I was expecting, but I wanted to hear them, and I'm most impressed, to say the least. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else have we got? Steph?
We have Councillor Cameron, and then Miss Gray, Mr Constable, and Councillor Houghton.
Okay, Councillor Cameron first.
Thank you, Convener. What I was going to deal with here is I think this is a very worthwhile exercise. It's more comment than question. All councillors had the opportunity of attending training on the 12th of March, and a number of them did from across the council. It was well received. It takes away a lot of the worry about how this would work. One of the things I took from it, which I found very comforting if I was ever in a situation of having to administer the nasal spray, is that the worst that can happen is it doesn't work. You're not going to do anybody any harm if they haven't had opioids and you give them a nasal spray, and presumably by this time you've sent for the ambulance. So I'm very happy with what's been suggested. I think Isla and her team and then the NHS have put forward a very good paper, and I think the recommendations are certainly the right way to move this forward and to deal with some of the things that Councillor Delaney was speaking about in relation to drug deaths and drug problems in the northeast of Scotland and Aberdeen in particular. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Did you say Ms Gray next?
I did, Convener, yes.
Hi, thank you, Convener. Yeah, it's just that, although we can see, the benefits of this, then we have to take it from our members perspective, where we've spoken to a few of them about it, and there is a lot of concerns, a lot of questions that are needing answered. And I just wondered, Isla, if people in organisation, they will be putting them together and putting them out to the staff to let them see, you know, not everybody will want to volunteer for that. I appreciate that, but there may be ones that want to but have a lot of questions around it. There's also situations where I've been asking around some of the staff that have been doing this previously, where they have been faced with, you know, a sort of customer who has come around and been very angry with them because they've done that. So that in itself can put them a bit at risk as well. So there's a, you know, the plan, yep, but there's a lot of work to be done. But I would like to be able to see some sort of question and answering. And also I would like to see something in writing that makes it, you know, it absolutely does say it's voluntary, that, you know, because if we have everybody working in the unit and then something happens and someone hasn't volunteered, then where does that leave them? It could potentially leave them open there. So, you know, we need a lot more clarity on that as well.
Yeah, Isla, do you want to come in on that? I think that's what part of the recommendations are, Michelle, you know, to look into all of that kind of stuff you're talking about, which is definitely needed, but I'll let Isla come in there.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a really good suggestion actually from Ms. Gray about the FAQs if you're considering volunteering. So we'll definitely take that one away. There was another comment about potential, I'll use the word potential for aggression perhaps, that Ms. Gray was talking about there. And actually this came up in a Q&A the other day. I didn't know if it would be okay with you, Convener, could we perhaps bring Fiona back in on this one?
Yeah, because I mean, people might, you know, have deliberately done what they've done and be very angry to discover that they've actually been pulled back from it. Yes, Fiona, do you want to answer that point?
Yep, absolutely. And I think it's a really good point to bring up. It's something that we've certainly had experience of, so I'm more than comfortable having that discussion with you. As I explained it, I guess, to our union colleagues last week, when somebody's having an overdose, they've, I guess, taken a substance for a specific reason. And at that point of going into overdose, their body is almost shutting down. So they have a lack of consciousness. Actually, they feel very calm and relaxed. And I suppose in a nice place, metaphorically speaking, I guess. So what happens when naloxone brings somebody around is there's almost an unexpected, you know, there's maybe a crowd around the person, they're perhaps feeling a little out of place and disorientated, unsure of what's happening. And that can lead to a bit of confusion and a bit of agitation in the person. But again, it's very variable. It absolutely does not happen on every occasion, but it is one of the things that can. The key part to all of our training is around that safety. So the first message that we take before giving, before taking any action is for people to make sure that it's safe for them to take action. So again, the first message is always, if it's not safe for you to take action, then the best you can do is call the ambulance, monitor the person from a distance, and await action. So if people don't feel comfortable in that position, regardless, I think it was Ms. Gray that asked that question, that would always be that course of action. And again, having people around you, not being alone when you're taking action if you can, that's another thing that I think provides reassurance. I spoke of a community pharmacy who in Aberdeen City utilised naloxone for the first time, not 6 weeks ago, I would say, and exactly that came round. But it was very well managed. There was support round about. There was reassurance given to that person about what had happened, and that there was an ambulance coming to check them over. The ambulance arrived and the situation was resolved. But absolutely, I won't sugarcoat that. That is absolutely something that may occur, but we provide part of the training to do that. I think going back to the question as well, if I could just say, In terms of staff confidence, if it's something for people who aren't sure about it, they're more than welcome to come along to training and decide after that point what they like, what action they would like to take. So we absolutely wouldn't feel that excluding people ahead of training was necessary. What we'd suggest is that they come along. Do the training takes half an hour to an hour online, so do the training and see what you think of it. So I'd be very encouraging or supportive of anyone that was unsure, because I think there will be certainly quite a few.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to come back in? That's great.
Yeah, it's just, and thank you for that, Fiona. But and I appreciate that. But again, I'll go back to Isla. It's how we communicate that to the workforce, that you can go for the training, but does not mean to say that you've signed up. And we need to get better. I've always said that we need to get better with communicating with our staff, and that's something hopefully we can do. Because yes, I can see why it would be a good thing, but this really needs to be communicated really well with the staff.
Yeah, the no pressure thing, I think, needs to be underlined.
Yeah.
You take that on board, Isla.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Constable.
Thank you, Convener. I note that the scheme is voluntary and that training is going to be provided, but again, coming from trade union members' point of view, is there the potential here for a legal challenge from somebody who's been administered this medicine in terms of negligence or possibly damages from that person? And I've got a follow-up question depending on your answer.
Important question, though. Yes, Isla.
The simple answer is no. To the best of my understanding, no. It's actually covered in law. I'm looking to Kirsten. Perhaps my colleague Kirsten can come in and add a little bit more information. She's on the call.
There, Kirsten?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Isla. Thanks, Convener. Yes, we've checked with our insurers. So because this is this would be a life-saving action, and because it's covered, as Isla said, under I think it's the Medications Act, there would not be any liability for anybody. As I think it was maybe Councillor Cameron mentioned, there's no possibility of doing anybody harm by administering naloxone if they have not taken an opioid overdose. So there wouldn't be grounds for anybody to take any action. However, as you know, we've got insurance around, our first aiders are insured, and as long as people have undertaken the training, they've been correctly trained, then there would be no personal liability for anybody who might be administering or handing out naloxone.
Thank you for that. Do you want your follow-up question, Ron?
Yes, Convener. If I'm understanding that correctly, then if there is a legal challenge, then the authority would accept responsibility in terms of any financial damages against the individual. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely correct, yes.
Right. Okay, that's fine, Convener. Thanks very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Councillor Houghton.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks. I think this has been a really helpful discussion, because I think it's something, saving a life is an absolutely incredible thing to do, regardless of how it's done. So it's good to hear, we're able to do this. Similar to what Ms. Gray was saying, I suppose my question's around what we're doing in terms of checking up on people who maybe, been in a situation where they've administered naloxone. Is there a follow-up with the individual? Who's that through? How do we provide that? And yeah, just sort of what the mechanism is around that, because while the individual may not be aggressive, it may be sort of a high adrenaline kind of experience, and it would be good to know just how we're kind of wrapping our arms around people who've gone through one of these incidents.
Yeah, I like backup support.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Absolutely, really good point, Councillor Houghton. We are in only the early stages of discussing that, but already as a working group, we've said that it's really important that we do have that follow-up support for anybody. What we're going to do is look at what we already have in place. So we already have some mechanisms available, but what we want to make sure is that we have a record of any instances where this has happened, and that's really closely checked up on it and followed up on. So we don't just leave it to the mechanisms we already have in place, such as mental health first aiders, etc. What we do is we do have a check and balance in place as well. We haven't set that up yet, but we absolutely will do. It's one of our considerations.
That's good. Thank you very much.
Okay, Steph, do we have anybody else?
Yeah, we've got Councillor Copeland and Mr. Masson, and I don't know if Ms. Gray has her hand up again or if it's in a previous hand.
Okay, Councillor Copeland.
Thank you, convener. I think Councillor Houghton has touched on one of the points I was going to make. And one of the things is we're asking for volunteers to do this, and we're putting them into what potentially could be a very traumatic position if they ever have to act. So I would hope that the appropriate support would be there for staff members. But I also think, and it was touched upon about our first aiders, that a certain amount of first aid training would be encompassed with this, because an overdose situation maybe doesn't come on its own. There's maybe other factors there that require assistance, like somebody might have crying with, or somebody's trying to kill themselves, they might have slashed their wrists as well. And I want assurances that, one, it's entirely voluntary, two, first aid training will also be given along with this, and three, perhaps we would consider paying an allowance to people that volunteer for this. I think we have a first aiders allowance already within the pay structure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be appropriate for this to qualify for that allowance as well. I mean, your thoughts would be appreciated. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, convener. Happy to come in on that. I suppose if I take the allowance question to begin with, I would have an affordability concern. It's not something which is budgeted for at this stage. What we don't want to do is make this restrictive on the basis of budget. This is something where we're looking to have as many people volunteering to undergo the training, at least, as we said before, in order, firstly, to increase awareness across our large staff group, if we can, ultimately, to reduce stigma associated with opioid use and opioid overdose, and to just increase knowledge in the community, actually, via our staff, to be able to do that. So that would be my my concern over that, although this is a test of change, so more than happy to consider that alongside you know, the other elements that we're looking at here. The other question was around first aid, specifically in first aid training. And again, what I would say is, from speaking with Fiona about the content of that training, it is very focused on the naloxone treatment and recognizing that and knowing what to do. And first and foremost, is focused on phoning an ambulance and getting that help there really quickly, which of course is the first thing you do in, you know, any first aid training. If somebody's not responsive, then that's what you need to do immediately anyway, and you can save a life by doing that in itself. The concern with increasing the scope of this is actually because, you know, again, we don't want to increase the burden on staff. Actually, if what you're saying is we're going to really increase the scope of this to cover any first aid, then I feel that there's an ask there. However, again, more than happy to take these considerations into the working group and the test of change as we move forward.
Can I come back, convener?
Yeah.
I was speaking about after the test of change, if we take this forward, we can look at allowances and things like that, subject to the budget proposals, obviously. But we're asking people to potentially go into a very traumatic situation, and I want assurances that appropriate support will be there for the staff members. Going forward, I think it'd be a good idea to combine this as part of first aid course as well, because the people we're asking to do this are primarily people that are working out in the community. And I think it's important that they have all the tools that they might need if they meet these circumstances. I would want assurances that it will be closely monitored, the support would be there. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Copeland. Can I take in Mr. Masson now?
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a little bit of confusion about what I've actually saw in the papers. I see that this exemption to the regulations came in place from the Lord Advocate. but it also mentions it's over the period of the COVID crisis. Does that mean once the COVID crisis is over, it'll fall back to the actual regulations, or is it a long-term thing that the council is looking to take forward? And if it is a long-term thing, is it covered by law in that case?
Okay, Isla, do you want that one?
Yes, thank you, convener. Well spotted, Mr. Masson. So you're right, it is a temporary change at this stage. Many other local authorities are looking at what action, such as what we're looking at today, could be taken to explore whether this temporary change, and to offer that feedback to suggest that a temporary change may become more permanent in future. So first and foremost, what I would say is we would be monitoring this very closely, and if that change was to be revoked, we would obviously take all the action that is needed to ensure that we are in line with any changes reverting back. And on the other hand, it is being explored in the future. I think Fiona is looking to come in. I'm more than happy to defer to Fiona on this one as well.
I thought it was just to back up what you were saying, and to let you know that work is already underway. So nationally they're lobbying to extend this past. We have checked with colleagues nationally whether there's a date at which this current statement of prosecution of policy will expire, and that there's no date in mind at present. But certainly colleagues nationally are using this as an opportunity to demonstrate the value of this, and to demonstrate how beneficial actually allowing naloxone to be easily available in the communities is. And I guess just in terms of part of the rationale for us being able to do it, and perhaps back to the last gentleman's question, the reason we're able to do this with people in the community, with family members, with people who have no medical training in the past, is that the products are safe, they're easy to use, and they can be taught with very simple basic life support. So for that reason, those involved in developing this programme are very keen to see this aspect of it continue, because I think you're absolutely in possession of workers who are in contact with people that medical services aren't rapidly so. So that would be the only thing I would add on to that, Isla.
Yeah, can I just add to that, Isla? I mean, one of the recommendations is to bring back reporting information. May you have more information about that by that time?
I thank you, Camilla. I would hope so. And obviously the dates within the paper are saying that we would want to run this test until December. So we'd be looking to come back to committee after such time, and we would provide any update that we have at that point on that particular point as well.
Okay, Mr. Masson, do you want to come back in?
Thank you. I just wish to check the clarity, because obviously because it has to be the legal thing there to back it up for going forward for long term. Otherwise it can come back and affect the council, and it could have private charges brought against our members within the union. So we just want to make sure, if it is just a temporary thing, how long it's going to be temporary for, and if it is going to be then passed into permanent legislation, we're in a position so we'll make sure we're doing everything legally and right, and we're supporting our members.
Okay,
So thank you.
Yeah. Do we have anyone else?
Convener, I've got Councillor MacDonald, but Mr. Rayner's got his hand up, so I don't know if he wanted to come in on that last point.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Mr. Rayner, can you come?
Hello, it was just a very minor point, but just to sort of pick up any concerns. I suppose that one of the opportunities that we have is that in terms of the workforce, these are people who are members of the union and people who live in our communities may well be affected themselves or have family members who have experienced drug-related problems. So I guess it's, whilst we're focused on the public and our perception about how we create opportunities for engaging with the public, there will also be a benefit to staff members and union members and their associated families in terms of this training and this distribution, which I think is one of the good opportunities that Aberdeen City Council has. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, convener. I think it was really just on, you mentioned there in the recommendations under 2.2 when this was coming back, and One of the things I'd like to have a little bit more information about is maybe just what Simon was saying there. A lot of what I took away from the 12th of March session, which was an excellent session for elected members, was that it would be family and friends first off who might be there to administer the drug, and then that it's got that ripple effect of going out to workers and eventually out to the public, or even elected members who might. Now, I haven't in my work as an elected member or as a member of the public had to deal ever with somebody who is lifeless and needing help in that way. And if at the moment if it happened, I, like everybody else, would just dial 999. But it is something that I have been really thinking about since that 12th of March session. But what I would like to know in that report that comes back, Isla, would be something around how often it does happen, because I suppose a small risk, and it's probably a good risk, is that you get trained up and so on, and you never come across a situation where you have to use the drugs. So I was just wondering, in that as well, is there any coming back for training every year, or just a refresher? Because it might be that you don't actually have to administer the drug at some time. I suppose the other technical question I had is, like other medicines, does the drug have a shelf life? Is it, have you carried it with you? Does it last a year or 2 years or 5 years or whatever? But that's something that could maybe come back in a further report.
Okay, Isla.
Yeah, thank you, convener. Absolutely, Councillor MacDonald, happy to do that as part of the report that comes back. I suppose one of the aims of this, I'd say a couple of things. Firstly, we are going to focus on certain geographical areas just in this test. And within those geographical areas, then we'll look at a range of activities that we can undertake, some of which will be around actually awareness raising. So as Ms. Gray was saying, we want to make sure that our communications are really effective in those areas, and that people have choices, and those choices might be to undergo the training. It might be to take it a step further beyond the training. It might be that by raising awareness, what we're supporting someone to do is to seek help for family members, for example, or to do something else like that. Because as you say, it may not be in working lives that we actually can make a real difference. So that focus in a geographical area, I think, is our first port of call. Secondly, I am aware that the medication does have a shelf life. So one of the activities that you ask of a volunteer, if they're actually carrying naloxone on them, is to keep an eye on that date and to renew as well. Fiona, more than happy if you want to come in and add anything to that, but if that covers it, if you feel that covers it, that's fine too. And refresher training is a good point as well. So we would pick that up as part of the training that we work with the NHS on, as to how often it might need to be refreshed. I can see my colleagues have put their hands up, so I'll be quiet.
You have to learn to ride a bike once only in your life, Sandra. Yes, Steph, have we got anybody else?
I think Mr. Rayner and Ms. Rayburn have their hands up, convener, to just follow up on what Isla said there.
Okay, and you come, guys.
Any order? First, Fiona.
No, but I was just going to clarify those, the refresher and the expiry date. So it's 3 years expiry, so it's got a fair time, but absolutely we do get that checked, and both products are roughly the same period. In terms of refresher training, I guess most of our clinical staff have been routinely involved in the discussion, but what we do with those staff members is we encourage them to redo the Scottish Drugs Forum training, because changes come, likes of the nasal naloxone. That's a new development for us, so that would be our first port of call. But for people who are not involved in it, we say at a minimum every 3 years they would undertake that training again, just to keep it up to date. But I think that's something that we would pick up with ILUF when we're developing the plan for council.
Okay, your colleague.
Hi, it's just so the point that you're making, Councillor MacDonald, about not actually encountering somebody overdosing is absolutely true. I mean, not many people encounter that situation, and the majority of people who do would phone an ambulance. I guess the problem we have around drug use is that most of the overdoses do take place in people's homes, and there's always a reluctance to phone for help because of some of the illicit nature of drug use. So that is where the risk is. So what we need to be able to do is increase the distribution, get it into the friends and families, get the kits out to friends and families in the community so it's there, it's easily usable. And I suppose by doing that and giving this a focus, it allows us to have that discussion about always call an ambulance. The police are not going to be arresting people because you've overdosed and used an illicit substance. Everybody wants to try and reduce the number of deaths. So it's the strategy is about trying to maximise the opportunity to get naloxone out into the community, and the City Council is absolutely well placed to increase that distribution network and be at the forefront of this in Scotland.
Okay, thank you. Did you see that, Isla? Shagri is asking, is there any possibility of a trade union person getting into that working group?
Yeah, I think that the steering group that I've suggested is an operational steering group, but I mean I can take it offline to discuss with trade unions the best way that we make sure that we stay connected and involved in this, whether it's an individual representing trade unions being part of that, whether it's that we have a regular meeting, say once a month, so that we're covering progress and having input that way. But absolutely committed to working together. So in whatever practical way that's best done.
That's fine. Okay, do I have any more hands, Steph?
I don't see any more hands, convener. No.
Okay, in that case, can we agree the recommendations on 9.1?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, we move on to 10.1, which is your recruitment update. That's Isla. Questions or comments on 10.1 from anyone?
Councillor Delaney, convener.
Yeah, Councillor Delaney, and you come.
Thank you very much, convener. Clearly, it's this initiative's worked very, very well, and it's been adapted very well during the pandemic. And clearly, it's offered staff new opportunities. So very, very supportive. But I've got a couple of questions. The report's noting that the digital toolkit is only recently released. I'm not sure if this is the final product, if it's still in development. But what I'd like to ask about this is if it could be adapted if need be to ensure that all the skills that have been obtained by those who volunteered for the temporary redeployment during the pandemic are added to the existing known data for these individuals to offer them increased flexibility in respect of future career moves. And my second question is, I'd also be interested to know if we're looking to continue to offer staff the opportunity to acquire new skills related to other areas of work that they would normally do, as I feel that might be able to help us better cover for annual leave, unexpected absences from an employer point of view, as well as enhancing the employee experience from the employee's point of view, allowing them to work in different work settings. Thank you, convener.
Okay, Isla, are you taking that one, or are you bringing Leslie?
Thank you so much, convener. Leslie's here. Ms. Strachan, sorry, is here as well. I think that what I can say is that the new skills development, the second point that Councillor Delaney made, is a really important one, and is also complex, because when we have a substantive post, it's really important that we get those opportunities to test out other roles, perhaps to develop our skills, to develop in other areas. One really excellent way to do that is through undertaking secondments. And the recruit scheme is set up in such a way that it handles secondments as well. And actually, we see that as a really positive thing. We really encourage all members of staff to consider undertaking secondments, and also the consideration of who might be a good match for those goes through that recruit process as well. So you'd be looking to take someone on potentially who has, the ability to take that secondment on without necessarily having all of the qualifications that substantive role may have asked for in the past. And on your first question, Leslie, can I bring you in on that one? Would that be okay?
Yes, thank you, Isla. Thank you, convener. On the first question about can we adapt the digital tool for people who have done the temp movement? Yes, the answer to that is yes. The way the system works, the way the recruit scheme works, is that employees complete what's called an individual profile on the individual on the digital tool. And what that does is it's basically like an application form that they would do that's stored. So it will store all their skills, all your qualifications, any training you've done, and any experience you've done. And you can go in and update that as often as you want. And it's that profile that's used to match you against any opportunities that come up. So those staff that we have that have signed up for temp movement are now into the digital tool, or at least have the opportunity to use the digital tool to sign up. And I suppose, yeah, coming back to Isla's point as well, about opportunities for new skills, we also advertise all vacancies and any of these sort of secondments or short-term projects that managers may have across the council on what we call the Opportunities Hub. And the Opportunities Hub is on the council's intranet. So again, all employees can kind of see these opportunities and have the opportunity to be matched against any vacancies or opportunities that come up.
Okay, Councillor Delaney.
Thank you, convener. Thanks to both officers. Thank you very much.
Have we got any more hands?
We do, convener, Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Copeland.
Okay, Councillor MacDonald first, then Councillor Copeland.
Thank you very much, convener. Can I ask, are we ahead of the curve compared to other local authorities in doing this? Because it does seem to me, the energy and the potential for this is something that that existing staff, but also people who might want to join the council would see as a real positive. And my second sort of really for clarification was in the on page 33, it says fuller reports coming back in June, but I guess from the earlier discussion on the business planner, that's now further into the year. Is that correct?
Yes, convener, if you don't mind, I'll take that one only because Ms. Strachan is sometimes a bit bashful about these things actually, and doesn't like to blow trumpets. I'll put it that way. I would say we are ahead of the curve on this. There are really good examples, and some of those examples actually are from across the UK, so not so much in Scotland, of authorities who have looked to do a similar scheme to recruit in terms of internal focus, internal matching, and internal development opportunities. In Scotland, I would say we are ahead of the curve in terms of really making that happen and really implementing that. What I would also say is in terms of our temporary movement during the pandemic, we had our temporary movement protocol up and running really, really swiftly, and we were supporting lots of other authorities actually who were looking to us and that great example. And one reason we had that was because actually we had really great engagement with the trade unions on that as well. So we got that protocol in place really quickly. So I'm jumping in there, Ms. Strachan, because I know sometimes you don't like to say these things.
Okay, Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thanks for that.
Okay, Councillor Copeland.
Thanks, convener. I did send some questions to Isla earlier on today, but I'll ask him here anyway. It's regarding redeployments. And I just want a confirmation that the redeployment registers are being checked to see if anybody has necessary transferable skills to take up some of these temp posts while they're waiting for something else, and they haven't been forgotten about. Do you want me to go through 2 or 3 questions? Do you want me to get them all at once or one at a time?
On you go.
All right. Second one is, has anybody been successfully matched into a temporary post from the redeployment registers? And do we think any of these temporary posts we've created might become permanent posts in due course? And I apologise, Isla, I've just thought of something else actually. Could you answer them first and I'll come back to the last one?
Okay, on you go, Isla.
Thank you, convener. Ms. Strachan, do you mind if I pass these ones to you? Thank you.
Thank you, Isla. Thank you, convener. Yeah, really good questions on this. So in terms of redeployees, again, the way the system works here is each of our redeployees have a dedicated people and organisational development advisors. So as soon as they come on to redeployment, for whichever reason that that they're coming on to redeployment, they'll get a dedicated advisor who will work with them throughout their period on redeployment. And so the advisor will consider kind of all opportunities as they're arising. First of all, with the new recruit scheme, because it's the digital tool now, redeployees will themselves have the opportunity to have the direct alignments, and they'll get email alerts to vacancies and so on. But each advisor will also be looking out. So yeah, the answer is yes. In relation to temp movement, yeah, I mean, our goal really in terms of redeployment is to find permanent suitable alternative employment for employees who are at risk of redeployment. But absolutely, what we do is where there are any form of temporary work, whether it be project work or whether it be temp movement, for example, then yes, because what we think is that it benefits both parties. It very much benefits the redeployees in terms of giving them additional skills, giving them additional experience, whilst they're waiting to secure permanent employment. But also, as you rightly say, it absolutely benefits us as an organisation in terms of filling some of our resource gaps that we really need to cover. So the answer is yes, I suppose, to that. In terms of your second question, Councillor Copeland, around have we had anyone? The answer is yes. We've had, I'm just having a wee look at my stats here. During this pandemic, we've got 3 redeployees who are currently doing temp duties at the moment, and that's been ongoing for some time. And we've also got 3 who are kind of in fixed term temporary roles as well. So yeah, we've kind of got 6 redeployees kind of in that position. Some of them are related to the COVID pandemic, and so they've been ongoing for a number of months. Your question about will they become permanent, I guess that remains to be seen. I don't have an answer to that, I'm afraid, but some of them certainly have been ongoing since sort of March, April last year and still ongoing. So kind of good news on that front. I hope that answers your question.
Can I say I'm very heartened to find that, because I think a lot of people feel they're thrown out of the scrap heap and forgotten about, but I'm really, really heartened to hear that we are ensuring that they're not being forgotten about and given huge amount of assistance. So well done for that. I'm going to apologise now for this one, because I just thought about it during, with regard to the Tom and the workforce, you mentioned that, how big a reduction have we had in our full-time equivalent posts since we started it, and especially this last year? Has that made a significant difference? And I suppose the silly question is it senior posts we're losing, or no senior posts have gone, or how does that work?
Convener, if you don't mind, I'll take that one. I think that's a very difficult question to answer.
I apologise for me. You probably know, I've really just thought of it.
No, it's no problem.
Try your best.
So I certainly don't have those numbers in front of me, Councillor Copeland, and it is a difficult one to quantify anyway, because workforce numbers go up and down year on year and within year. So whilst we're looking for efficiency as a kind of standard as part of our redesign, you do see fluctuations, and you see fluctuations for a number of reasons, not least because if you receive funding in order to deliver something, then there's an expectation obviously that you move or recruit staff in order to be able to deliver on that funding. So that's just one reason why you might see workforce numbers actually go up and down rather than just a single trend. The other thing is that obviously when you're looking at redesign, it's not a simple case of reduction, I'll say it in those terms, but actually it may be a case of saying, how do we do this more effectively and more efficiently? And actually, your point about is it senior versus something else is a good one, because it's not always a case of simply fewer in terms of FTE number. It may be a case of saying, actually, if we do this role in this way, overall that gives us a reduced cost, but it also helps us to manage our demand and helps us to meet the needs of our customer more effectively as well. So I'm giving you a complex answer to what is a complex question. Equally, I'm happy to go away and look at some of the numbers around it and circulate that to you if that's helpful.
It's very helpful. I'm sorry to chuck that one on you. Could you possibly also give us an idea of, we've set aside a budget for VSER, and if we're sort of anywhere near it this year, or if it doesn't look like we're going to hit the top, when you come back with the figures.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your
Isla, you
indulgence,
take that
Convener.
away.
Thanks for your indulgence, Convener. Thanks, Isla.
Okay, you're welcome, Councillor Copeland. Do we have anybody else? Yeah.
I've got Mr. Willis, convener.
Okay, Mr. Willis, on you come.
Thank you, convener. First of all, I'd just like to say I absolutely welcome the recruit scheme. I think it's a fantastic tool, and the opportunities it's giving people is amazing. But I'm looking at Leslie and Isla's faces, and they know what I'm going to say here, because we have had these discussions. And Councillor Copeland mentioned about people being left on the scrap heap. But the fact is, we still have employees within the council who do not have internet access. And as Leslie mentioned, the Opportunities Hub, it's there on the internet for all staff to see, but it's just not the case. I mean, it's a limited number, but there are staff who, for whatever reason, whether it's age, lack of willingness, disability, they don't have ICT access. And I know there is a commitment to try and help these people, and they can be looked at on an individual one-to-one basis, but I think we need to do a bit more. And whether it's a paper-based system or whatever it is, I think we need to find a solution to make sure these people truly are included.
Yeah, I would agree. I am an IT ignorant person and I get paper stuff. So I'm sure they could take on board looking into that, because it is important that people are kept in touch. You want to comment on that, either Isla or Leslie?
Thank you, convener. Mr. Willis, obviously we have had lots of conversations about this, and quite rightly looking out for what are a small number of people, relatively speaking, but nevertheless, every single person in our workforce counts and matters and should be included in all of these opportunities. And I've given my commitment and my team's commitment. They absolutely are, and they will always be supported on an individual basis if that's what is needed and that's what it takes. For whatever reason they're having to struggle to be involved and to connect with any of these systems. The recruit scheme is a digital tool. It's done digitally. Applications for internal and external jobs have always been done, or for a number of years have been done digitally. We know though, and what we want to do is we absolutely want to close that gap. So what we're looking at is even though it's a small number of people, making sure that every person has this access. And we're working closely with trade union colleagues, all trade union colleagues on that, and on looking at a number of potential solutions. So what I am hesitant to do is to commit to paper-based solutions, albeit that sometimes, absolutely, if that's the only possible outcome that can be put in place, we don't discount that completely. But what we want to do actually is reduce the gap, increase access for individuals and for our workforce, and actually support people to increase their skills as well, because if they're missing out through work, they may well be missing out in other parts of their lives as well, and that's not all right. So absolutely commitment from me, Mr. West.
No, absolutely appreciate that. Thanks, Isla, and welcome the commitment you've given to that. And yeah, if we can upskill these people, all well and good, but we just need to make sure everyone's included. And if it means resorting to sending out a letter and snail mail, then so be it. But thank you.
I can hear exactly what you're saying as a person that is involved in that. Steph, do I have anybody else?
Yeah, I have Councillor Houghton and then Mr. Masson, convener.
Okay, on you come.
Thanks, convener. It's just a very quick question, but a comment, then a comment. Can I just clarify, based on the last question, what's the sort of number we're looking at? I know I've heard small number, but how many employees do we reckon aren't able to access the internet on a reasonable basis?
Do we know?
I would need to come back. I mean, I say that I would need to come back. What I mean is, what we know are things like through rolling out digital pay slips, we offer an opt-out option, and that opt-out is really, really small. So I believe it's in the realms of about, I'm going to say 4%. I would need to come back to you on that one, but it is small. What I would say though is the opting out is not simply a case of do you sit at a computer screen in your role. It's also on the basis of do you have access to these things on a personal device as well, because of course we're really encouraging of that. So the recruit scheme is also accessible through a mobile phone, for example. But there will be some people who simply don't own a smart device, and we're not expecting them to. And so, it's how we support those people as well. So I'm being a bit hesitant there to try and give you a number because again, it's not a straightforward number. But again, I can look at some of the detail around that and circulate something if it will help.
Thanks, Convener. I think it would just be handy for our own knowledge just to get a sense of what that number is, and then just to say, I think there's almost unanimity on this, that I think that whatever we can do to ensure that people, whether it's being coached by a colleague or by their allocated some time from their line managers, to give them time, because sometimes they might not feel as though they kind of have the right to go and have that 2 hours and to sit in front of a computer screen that's maybe away from the usual work area, but we absolutely have to support mobility within our workforce. And yeah, I think that's something everybody seems to agree on. Thanks, Convener.
Yeah, fair points there. Mr. Masson?
Hello, thank you. I'm very concerned. I know it might be small numbers of people who might not be able to access, but I'm worried about if it's a specific group of people who are not able to access it. Is it possible for a quality study to actually be done? Because I've got fears that it may be people who are over the age of 55 and people with actual disabilities as well, who may be affected by the digital rollout and the access to digital equipment and the lack of training or support mechanisms that's in place. Would it be possible to get a qualities breakdown of who is not able and for what reason they're not able to actually use these systems?
Is that possible, Lila? Sounds like some important information there.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I mean, again, what we can do is we can look at data that we have through the digital payslips rollout, which is not relating to the recruit scheme. What I would say about the recruit scheme again is we are absolutely committed to supporting any individual to access this and be able to access it. There was a very detailed equality impact assessment that was done before we implemented the new scheme. More than happy to circulate that as well. What I would say again is that applications for both internal, if you're applying as an internal candidate or as an external candidate, have been online for a number of years, and actually the recruit scheme supports, is a positive step where equalities are concerned, and the equality impact assessment backs up the fact it's absolutely a positive step. So I just felt I needed to clarify on that point, but yes, I can look at some of the data around the issues that Mr.
I am aware we're asking you quite a bit of stuff today, so you don't have to do this tomorrow, but slide it in somewhere. Mr. Masson, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I appreciate all the effort it's actually went into the scheme. I think it's a great scheme if everybody's got access to it, but I'm just aware that to be a fair scheme, everybody does have to have access to it. I can understand an equality impact statement being done before it was implemented would create a certain result, but now it has been implemented, the qualities should be a lot easier to spot now, and I feel like a further equality research should be actually done at this point.
Okay, Isla, you're hearing that?
I'm hearing it.
Okay.
Would that be possible?
What I can do is...
What we don't want to do here, and I have to be honest, Mr. Masson, is specifically be able to identify people. This has always been a concern when we're doing health and safety and when we're doing anything, along this lines where it might be a small number of people. We don't, for any reason, wish to be able to identify, these folks, if you get my drift.
Yes, thank you for that. Obviously, it was just to get the actual groups or type of people who...
Yeah, I understand that if it's elderly or if it's people with a disability or something like that, maybe you could fish out that kind of information without actually grinding down to the actual people.
Convener, if it's okay with you, I'll work with the team to look at
see what you can do.
Absolutely, the equality impact assessment that was done previously, and to circulate information on that. What I would say is, again, it is accessible for everybody, and we will support anybody individually who may feel that they have an issue with accessing the system in the same way that we would have previously when the applications were done online before.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. How we're doing, Steph?
I don't see any more hands, Convener. I think that's everybody.
Okay, can we agree the recommendations on 10.1?
Agreed.
Agreed.
We now move on to 11.1, which is the corporate health and safety. Do we have any questions and comments on this one? This is a wee bit bigger, goes to 82. Anybody?
Councillor Cameron, convener.
Yes, Councillor Cameron, in you come.
Thank you, convener. I've got a couple of questions, but if I could do them one at a time so that I can find them, if that's okay.
Yes, sure. Call ready and waiting. Okay. Page 68. It's in relation to the role of elected members. In the second paragraph, I'm a little bit confused by reference to the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee, if the Staff Governance Committee is de facto the Health and Safety Committee. Got that, Colin, on page 68, 5.2.
Sorry, 5.2, that's right.
It's around the fact is whilst the Staff Governance Committee gets the information they get on health and safety, where there's an internal audit and it involves a health and safety recommendation, that goes to Audit and Risk Committee. So Audit and Risk Committee are responsible for closing off internal audit recommendations. That's the only time
thank you, Mr. Lever. That's perfect. I understand that now. My next question is on page 78, 511. It's about commission services, and my question is, who will scrutinise to determine the validity of these health and safety plans from contractors?
Initially, it's the responsibility of the commissioning service and their managers, but we also have an internal audit process where we look at the higher risk areas and carry out audits of their entire process.
Okay, and I suppose a supplementary in that is, does the commissioning body have the expertise in health and safety to carry out this assessment?
Yeah, okay. I think to start off by, the commissioning manager is just the person who takes on the service. So the person who's normally taken, we're trying to not just make it construction based and take it in over all the services we commission. So normally the person who's commissioning it will have that expertise on the topic matter. Where it comes to construction, and I'll give an example, if a school's looking to have some construction work done, it wouldn't be the head teacher or the service there that actually takes on the contractor. It would be somebody from either our capital team or our corporate landlord team who have the expertise in that area.
Okay, so for the avoidance of doubt, I wasn't thinking about just construction, I was thinking across the board.
Okay.
Anybody who is going to commission, the commissioning manager or one of their direct team, will have health and safety training and expertise in order to make that judgment. Is that what you're telling me?
They'll have topic-based expertise, which usually has the ability for them to identify health and safety risks.
What happens in the event of them not having that?
My team are available for them to actually come to give that expertise that we need. So there will be support from my team and also other subject matter experts who we have around us. We're lucky enough as an organisation to have a wide variety of services with people who have that expertise.
Okay, you can maybe see, convener, where I'm coming from. There's a lot of detail in this policy, but this detail that I've been trying to pull out just now doesn't exist in the policy.
Yeah, and sorry, to get part of the answer you're looking for, Councillor Cameron, I think, is beneath the policy there sits a suite of procedures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there will be a managing contractors procedure that's being drafted by the corporate landlord.
Okay.
And that will have a greater level of detail. So the policy is the higher level information, and below that, for the higher risk areas, there's a suite of procedures that actually are in place to actually give managers more information and more detail on what they're required to do.
Okay, no, thank you for that. My mod.gov has just crashed, and I have been left with my next question, which is a few pages down, but I haven't got the page behind it. But I can put it in context, and then I think I'm finished, convener, if that's okay.
Okay.
It's in relation to home working and DSE. And the next paragraph is about loan working. So if I could lump them both together, I've only got one of the questions, but I can remember the other one. Does ACC provide equipment and furnishing necessary to ensure safe working vis-a-vis DSE if somebody's working from home? And when we're looking at loan working, have we taken into account the situation that has existed for the last 12 months and doesn't appear to be disappearing anytime soon, of people actually loan working at home in relation to health and safety? And while you think about that, Mr. Lever, I'll try and get my mod.gov up again. Thank you.
Okay, it's probably, I can answer the health and safety elements of it, and hopefully, if need be, Isla can actually help me out from the home working part, because we've been doing work throughout the pandemic on this. The legislation requires us, where people are working at home, requires us to make sure that they have appropriate equipment in place. Okay, so not necessarily that we be provided with the equipment, but the fact that they have it, okay, is the first element of it. The pandemic has allowed a temporary working from home situation to arise. So what HSE and the legislation says is we don't need to go out automatically and provide everybody with everything, and then this finishes and we're left with a huge surplus of equipment. So what we've been doing is having a more pragmatic approach and asking staff. We've done surveys and asked staff to come to us where they're having issues. And where they've had issues, we've actually gone out and solved those issues and provided equipment for them. So once this temporary, because it's still considered to be that, this temporary situation is passed, we'll go back to full DSE risk assessment, identifying what equipment staff need and what risks there are to them. Hopefully that gives enough detail to answer your question.
To a certain extent, I'd like to hear what Isla's got to say first, though. Or maybe I should say something before Isla comes in. That would be more sensible, convener. So it was temporary. It's now been going on wearing on for 13 months. We would have anticipated staff actually providing that type of equipment themselves, although we as an employer have asked the staff to work from home. I've got a slight problem with that.
Okay, Isla. I mean, if you've got the equipment at home, I mean, if you're more au fait with it, it's sometimes better and easier to work with it. But we'll see what Isla says.
No, I agree, convener. But I know, for example, when I started working from home, my initial idea was to sit in the settee with my laptop on my knee. Now, that's my choice. And I, to a certain extent, I'm not an employee, therefore I'm not covered by the same sort of legislation. But an employee whom we ask to work from home is in a completely different situation. So that was really why I was asking the question.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah, Isla, okay.
Thank you, convener. So, Councillor Cameron, on a couple of points there. So, Colin's absolutely right in the sense that from an HSE perspective, and we've double and triple checked this point because, as you can imagine, we would want to make sure that it is still considered a temporary environment that we're operating in. On the other hand, what we do with our staff is not simply on the basis of HSE instruction and legislation. It's also on the basis of well-being and productivity and effectiveness. So with that in mind, we have extensive instruction and guidance for managers in terms of supporting staff to be as comfortable as they can be whilst working at home in this temporary, albeit extended temporary environment. And we've promoted that extensively. As Colin said, that included within it the ability to flag as an individual or as a manager if there was somebody who is not able to get, I'll say, to get comfortable working from home. And on that basis, not only would the health and safety team review any of these flags, if you like, we would also provide equipment. So we were able to repurpose or reuse equipment that was already in offices so that we weren't incurring additional cost, but get that out to people, such as keyboards, mice, in some cases even chairs. We didn't do that extensively because it needed to be on the basis of need, as you would imagine. Again, because there's a cost implication, and because technically we are in a temporary situation. We also made sure throughout that process that the guidance included, what to do if you were actually suffering from any kind of pain, and that we would get you the support that you needed if that was the case. What I would also say is that, yes, we as an employer have been both instructing actually and asking people to work from home, but we're doing that on the basis of public health guidance and instruction that we have, obviously, from Scottish Government, which we absolutely would be following. So once we're in a position where there is a greater element of choice around this, which of course I want to discuss with committee in more detail when we look at future of work, then we would be considering how do we ensure that we're in line both with health and safety regulation, but also in terms of staff wellbeing.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Cameron.
Yes, thank you for your indulgence, and thank you to Isla and Colin for their answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other hands?
I don't see any other hands just now, convener, no.
Okay, can we agree the recommendations on 11.1?
Agreed.
Thank you. Move on to 12.1, which is the corporate health and safety update. Do we have questions on that one? Isla will keep me, Steph will keep me right.
I don't see any hands, convener, no.
Okay, can we agree the recommendations at 12.1? That's fine. We move on to 12.2, which is the update from April to December. Again, starting at page 95 to 108. Do we have any questions on this report? You keep me right, Steph, please.
Councillor Cameron, convener.
Okay, Councillor Cameron, in you come. Hello.
Hello.
Have you got questions on 12.2?
I have. I'm just having trouble with the IT again. It's on page 98, the graph which shows the number accessing the service in each of 4 years. I was surprised to see that in April 20 to December 20, we actually had a lower number than in the previous 2 years, taking account of the fact that we were in COVID situations during that period of time. I know it's only 10 lower, and a statistician would tell me that wasn't significantly different, but I just wonder if Isla had any idea as to why that hasn't increased.
You just want to ask us anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, Isla.
Thank you, convener. I'm wondering if it would be okay if Mrs. Foley would like to come in. Of
course.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, thank you, convener, and thank you, Councillor Cameron. Yes, we too were slightly surprised when we saw that, Councillor Cameron. When we've looked at it, we actually think that the reason that this is lower is that it's been slightly lower is twofold. Partly because during that period we did have a significant number of people who were stood down, and so therefore were perhaps not accessing council services to the same extent, but also because we now have such a significant number of our own mental health first aiders, we have seen an increase in people going directly to the mental health first aiders in the first instance. And obviously, we'll need to continue to monitor that, and hopefully when we bring the mental health action plan update to committee in June, we'll have a bit more evidence around this. But we do think the initial indications are that people are actually making use of our own trained mental health first aiders, as opposed to going straight to the employee assistance service.
No, I mean, that'd be excellent. If that's the reason, that'd be excellent. I've got another question, convener, if that's okay.
Yeah.
On page 104, 3.19. This is where there are management referrals to occupational health. And my question, I understand the paragraph, but my question is, if the the service does not get a report, do we know that the member of staff who was referred has taken up the OH appointment and OH has provided a report to the employee, rather than us not having a report because for obvious reasons of confidentiality, we wouldn't expect to get a report?
Yes, do you want me to take this one again, Isla?
Yeah, on you go.
Yes, we do know that we would be informed if somebody hadn't attended. So we do know that the appointment has been attended, and the employee does have the right to see the report in the first instance. So in the majority of cases, we do know that it's just that they, for whatever reason, they have decided not to share the report with us. However, as you'll see, there's also seems to have been an issue where on some occasions we would have expected a report, and the employee has said that they're happy for us to have a report, and no report has been forthcoming. So I'm working with the occupational health providers to make sure that is minimised, and that where there is a report which has been presented, that we do definitely get to see that. So we have picked that up with them.
No, that's excellent. I mean, part of my reason for my question is I know with a previous OH supplier, reports were few and far between and often very, very late. So I'm comforted by that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, did you just see from the trade unions there, they also have first aiders that people go to as well? Yes, Steph, do we have anybody else?
I don't see anybody else's hands, convener, no.
Okay, in that case, can we agree the recommendations on that report? Thank you.
Agreed.
Then move on to 13.1, equally safe at work report. Do we have any questions or inputs into this one? Steph, I'll take your guidance.
Just giving people a second, but no hands, convener.
Okay, can we agree the recommendations on 13.1?
Agreed.
13.2, the action plan. Do we have questions? Oh, I think somebody's just put their hand up for that one. No?
I'm not seeing any hands actually, convener, on that one, I don't think.
Okay, it was just the blue circle that flashed, not the orange one. So, okay, in that case, can we agree the recommendations on 13.2?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, and that being the end of business, can I thank you for your attendance? I think we made history today. I'm not sure, but I think that's the first vote that we've had on this committee. We might check that back. So we maybe made a bit of history today. Probably our longest meeting, but I'm not sure. But hopefully our June meeting may be in committee room, but Steph will put out a Teams appointment into your diaries just in case. It can always be removed, but we may be in committee rooms for our next meeting. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for coming along.
Thank you.
Thank you, convener.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.